In this podcast, you will learn exactly how to think, how to feel, how to perceive, and how to be Christ like. In other words, you will learn exactly how to develop Christ consciousness. Maybe you are a devoted Christian, maybe you are an atheist, maybe you are just a spiritual seeker. I don't know what is your status, but really, it doesn't matter. After this episode, you will be so advanced spiritually, at least in potential. You need to implement what you will learn, obviously, but you will be so further ahead in the spiritual realm that it will be all worth it. Every second that you will invest in this episode. So I will do a promise to you. This will be one of the most profound discussions that you will ever hear, understand, and interact with about Christ. And hey, that is a bold promise, huh? It's a difficult, complex subject, but I have been preparing myself spiritually in my soul, in my mind, in my spirit for so many years for this specific episode that I have no doubt in my mind that this will be the case. So, baby, if you're ready to develop one of the most exciting, miraculous, and stupendous stage of consciousness or states of consciousness, the Christ consciousness, get ready because you are about to go in a beautiful ride. And welcome, my friend, to the most transformative podcast in the multiverse. This is the Mastermind Podcast Challenge Season 2 with your host, your favorite doctor of all time, El Papacito of Puerto Rico, your Dr. Derek Israel, and this is the episode 580. Oh my God, we are rolling here, huh? So before we begin with one of the most profound discussions that you will ever hear, let me tell you that today I'm promoting what I call my life transformation service. This is a premium service for only serious clients that want a holistic transformation with me, your favorite doctor, Derek Israel. This is a premium service and the link is in the description. So if after this discussion you are interested in working one-on-one with me for your life transformation, go to the link below and see if you want to book that reservation to yourself and start a new life. So let's start where I begin. It's a difficult subject. As I said, I have been preparing myself for this subject for so many years. I didn't have this episode for today agenda, but I say, hey, let's do it today because we don't know. Maybe I die tomorrow. I'm traveling today, tonight. Maybe I die in a crash. I don't know. We never know. So I said, this wisdom, this truth must see the world. I cannot die, right? I cannot die without expressing what is Christ consciousness and how you can develop it for your life. So, the basic understanding that you need to have before everything else is that everything is a state of consciousness. Everything is a state of consciousness. So it's not like Christ is so special that you can develop a Christ consciousness like more than a human, average, normal, everyday type of consciousness to a Christ consciousness. No, no, no. Everything is a state of consciousness. For example, a frog, and I will go radical here, okay, because I want you to really comprehend this concept of states of consciousness. A frog, the animal, it has its own state of consciousness. And if you go very, very, very deep in your spirituality and you can literally penetrate that aspect of consciousness, of the collective consciousness that is infinitely united, you can basically become in consciousness a frog. Yes, you can become a frog. That's why shamans, as I discussed in the episode titled "The Journey of the Shaman Archetype," if you want more information, in that episode I discussed that the shaman is always the one that can become an animal, not in real life. He cannot become an eagle, a frog, a cat, physically, materially. No, it's in consciousness, is in his mind. He can operate his mind slash spirit as everything in the universe, including a frog, but also a plant, a palm, for example. You can develop that state of consciousness as well. You can develop a state of consciousness of a child. When I am doing art, I'm always trying to operate not from the psychologist Derek Israel socially conditioned state of consciousness. No, I don't want that because it will compromise my art. I want to operate from the art or from the state of consciousness of a child because I will create more freely. I will play more. Okay. So everything is a state of consciousness. And with sufficient faith and practice, we can access and solidify any state of consciousness. Any state of consciousness. But you may say, oh, Derek, but what is the ultimate state of consciousness? The most profound. Like, give me the treasure, the ultimate, the one that is the most transcendental. Hey, it is Christ consciousness. It is this one. I don't know that answer really. I don't think Christ consciousness is the ultimate. I think that in my own knowledge and experience, and it's limited, right? I only have 28 years old. I'm experimenting with different type of spiritualities. I know that I have a lot more space to grow, but for me right now, the God mode, what I call God mode, I have a specific episode about this that is called How to Operate in God Mode. That for me is the state of consciousness that has been more powerful and profound. Okay. But what is really interesting about the Christ consciousness, although I don't consider it so powerful as the God mode, is that because we are so in tune with Christ as a society, as culture, as Western Catholic based culture, it is easier for us to access this state of consciousness if you really want to and if you really have faith in what I'm talking about. For example, I don't consider the Christ state of consciousness more powerful than, for example, the Mohammed state of consciousness of the Islam religion. But let's be real. Here in the Western, maybe if you live in the United States, maybe you live in Puerto Rico or Latin America, you don't speak about Muhammad too much. Like, it is not something that we speak every day. Maybe if you're a Muslim, you do, but most people in this society are not Muslims. So what we speak every day, what we go to church almost every Sunday, right? When we were uh, growing up and stuff like that, what we hear in school, what the book that we read, what is the Bible, the movies that we see in the Holy Week are the movies of the crucifixion, the movies of the desert, in Jesus Christ story. So it's like we are prepared, we are brainwashed, it's another way to say it, to be Christ. This is our power. This is our culture. I'm not saying that this is better than the Buddhist that is right now in China, in Japan, in India, accessing Buddhist consciousness, because for them it's easier because that is their culture. I am not saying that our culture is superior. I'm just saying that this is our sword. This is our weapon. This is what we select. As Friedrich Nietzsche used to say, we select the ideas, we select the concepts that give us the best opportunity for power. So we, as society, long ago, we decided that Christ consciousness, Christ archetype, the Christ narrative, the Christ story will be our story, our collective myth, psycho myth, psychological myth. Therefore, it's like our brain is wired to learn how to vibrate in this harmony, in this frequency, easier than other religions or stories or myths that you are not familiarized with, right? Because you haven't explored them so much. And not everyone around you is speaking about Hanuman of India or Krishna of India, or no one is talking about those. But if you open yourself and you go to those cultures and you start experiencing those state of consciousness, you will be able also to experience those. But Christ consciousness is easier for us. So that's why it's very cool, this state of consciousness. And that's why I think if you really, really put the work, you will be able to manifest this type of consciousness. So in a nutshell, very, very direct to the point, how to develop Christ consciousness. And I will then tell you exactly 10 characteristics, definitive characteristics of Christ consciousness. But first, how to develop that? Well, first, you need to understand that Christ consciousness is a vibration. It's a way to put it. It's a way of being. It's another way to put it. But vibration, I like to refer that as a vibration because we can all relate to that concept of a vibe. That you say love is a vibration. Yes, it makes sense. You can relate to that. Or maybe I can say to you, sexual energy is a vibration. And you imagine quickly, your mind imagine quickly, yes, when I am sexually excited or horny, I am kind of vibrating in a particular way. I am operating my metaphysical phenomenology, my experience in a particular way. So Christ consciousness is like that. It's a vibration. It's a vibe. It's a state of mind. Okay. In other words, it's a state of thinking, feeling, perceiving, and being. It's like these are like the most concrete aspects, because some of you, I know that you don't like the word vibration. You are like, oh no, that is too new agey for me. Give me a scientific variable that I can measure. Well, you can measure vibration, definitely. But if you want a more psychological kind of explanation, yes, thinking, feeling, perceiving, and being, those are kind of the parts of how we vibrate, because you vibrate accordingly to how you are thinking. For example, if you are thinking pessimistically, you are vibrating very low. Have you noticed this? because then you start feeling bad. Of course, you will not feel awesome thinking very pessimistically, right? You will feel kind of depressed, fearful. You will feel maybe anger. So those emotions basically will drive your vibration as well. And also, how you are thinking and feeling will determine what you perceive in the world, what you project into the world. Then you will always see the glass full, the glass empty instead of full. You will see everyone that is talking bad about you instead of seeing them as your friends. You will see them as your enemies because you will perceive what you are, because perceiving, folks, is projecting. Perceiving is projecting. You project in the outside what you feel in the inside. So all of that combined is basically how you are, is your identity. It becomes your vibe, your vibration. So Christ is a way of feeling, thinking, perceiving, and being, aka is a way of vibrating. Okay, that first you need to understand what is this type of vibration or modus operandi. And for that, go to my episode called Modus Operandi. And secondly, after you understand how to vibrate, you need to literally vibrate in this way. You need to act as Christ. You need to think as Christ. You need to feel as Christ. You need to perceive as Christ. In other words, you need to be Christ, one with Christ, one in consciousness. It's not that you have a consciousness and Christ have a consciousness and you are trying to communicate, or maybe have a relationship with that consciousness. No, it's not about relationship. It's about union. It's about crucifixion. The crucifixion symbol means union. That's why you have two sticks that are crossing each other. That means that they are merging. Dimensions are merging. The vertical dimension means kind of the spiritual dimension, and the horizontal dimension of the cross means like more like the human dimension, the ego dimension. So when Jesus is crucified in a symbolic, mythological, dream-like symbolic way, that means that your ego is crucified into God. God and you, the human, and God, the supernatural phenomena, are one, became one, because they were always one. But then you come back home, you come back to heaven. You see the symbolism here? So yeah, this is how you develop. But now you're maybe asking, okay, Derek, that sounds kind of cool and interesting. But now tell me exactly how Christ consciousness vibrate in order for me to know how can I proceed in my daily life in order to vibrate like that. So yeah, let's do that. That is why you're here. And let's waste no time. So these are what I consider. I was shaving this morning and I cut myself here. Yes. Okay. Um, Now let's discuss the most important aspects of Christ consciousness. I will be discussing how many? 10 of them. Obviously, I don't think that this is a definitive list, but I want to do this podcast in max an hour. So 10 for me works in the time framework that I work for, but maybe definitely in the future I can do a second part, or maybe I am thinking about also doing an episode in the future about Christ as an archetype, but maybe I will do that in the future. So here are the most important characteristics. The first one, Jesus really means love. Therefore, you must love infinitely to access the Christ consciousness. This is a very, very important aspect of the Christ consciousness. The Christ consciousness is all loving. And this is something that most Christians, sadly, they have grown. It's like they are operating from guilt, from shame, from judgment instead of absolute love. And then they are egos that think that they are spiritual, but they are just only egos that are telling you, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, blah, 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 blah. You will be punished. That is not love, dude. That is judgment. You are operating from judgment. And Christ, he operated from love. Now, it is not that Christ doesn't have a law and righteousness. It has. Yes, sometimes you need to put high standards to become Christ-like. But those high standards must be based on love as an infrastructure for those standards. No judgment, no fear. And that is what most Christians have grown. For more information about this aspect of the importance of love as the fundamental aspect of your morality, go watch my episode called Divine Morality. Divine Morality. No, it's not. It's not like that. Sorry, that is an episode on Spanish. The episode that I'm referring is the true nature of sin. The true nature of sin. That is one episode that you can actually understand about this aspect of love. So yeah, if you really want to develop Christ consciousness, you need to understand Jesus means love. Every time that you are reading the Bible, substitute the word Jesus for love, and you will understand exponentially better the Bible. Because when you are thinking about, when you are reading the Bible and you said that like Jesus did this, Jesus did that, you are imagining a guy, a historical figure, a prophet. It's not like that. The Bible is just referring to a state of consciousness that is evolving. And this is not only the case for the Bible. This is the case for the Quran. This is the case, this is the case for the Bhagavad Gita. This is the case for every sacred book that there is. The Kybalion, the Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Those books, what are referring is how a consciousness evolved, how consciousness, aka spirit, the pattern, not a human being, not a social human being, the pattern of existence, the collective consciousness, how that evolved through time, how that became from ego to love in the case of the biblical paradigm. So just notice how hard was God in the Old Testament. And then it became Jesus. It became love. And then it's like more friendly. And then you end up with a more sophisticated consciousness after reading the Bible because your ego is kind of growing as well with the God. The God of the Bible is evolving. It's not a static God. It's introspecting, is thinking, is perceiving, is feeling, is sophisticating his vibration, is sophisticating his relationship with humanity, that in the ultimate analysis is not a relationship, but a symbiotic state of ultimate union and non-dual playfulness. So if you really want to be Christ-like, love absolutely. Love yourself, love the sinner, love the terrorist, love the pedophile, love the raper, the priest that is a raper. Love your mother, love your father, love even Satan. You need to love. If you cannot love Satan, aka the ego, and for more of that, just watch my podcast titled The Real Definition of Hell. The Real Definition of Hell. If you cannot love even Satan, you are not Christ-like. Because how Christ can basically defeat Satan with conflict? It cannot be done. You cannot, as in Buddhism they say, you cannot cure hate with hate. You only can cure hate with love. So if Satan, Lucifer, the ego, whatever you can imagine, is playing the game of hatred, if you as a Christ-like entity, if you're playing that game, the ego game, oh, I will hate you. You hate me, I hate you. You want to destroy me, I want to destroy you. If you are playing the same game, notice you are giving the enemy more power. And if you know a little bit about martial arts and maybe MMA or something like that, you know that the fighter that is controlling the pace of the fight probably will win the fight, because he's vibrating in a way that the other fighter is trying to adapt to his style of fight. You cannot do that as a fighter. You need to establish your pattern. And the other fighter have a choice. He can adapt or he can stay in his pattern. So if they are two very intelligent, talentful fighters, they both will stay on their lane during the fight. But if the guy is following the other's style of fight, probably he will lose. He already lost. Notice, he already lost in the ring because he's following the other's mentality, the other's leadership. You cannot follow Lucifer leadership. Lucifer leadership is based on guilt, fear, anger, hate. So you cannot be fearful of it. All right. You cannot hate him. You cannot do the same thing that he's promoting. It's obvious. It's obvious. Right. And if you want more information about this specific concept, I recommend the book that is called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. In that book, you will learn the operations of the devil and how he operates through disseminating fear. And with fear, we cannot combat the devil, only with love. Christ love. Absolute love. Beautiful, huh? Beautiful. The second aspect is that Christ means, so I already defined what Jesus means, right? Love. But now what Christ means? Well, Christ means, this is one of the most powerful things that you will ever hear about Christ. Christ means the fire of consciousness, of desert-like consciousness, or the active principle of consciousness. That means that you must be supraconscious to burn every sin in yourself and therefore every sin in the world, and therefore become holy or pure consciousness. So Christ is the fire that burns the impurity of consciousness, not only your consciousness, but the collective consciousness of the multiverse. So now when you are reading the Bible, whenever you see the word Jesus, you will think about love. And whenever you see the word Christ, you will think about your consciousness. But it's not normal consciousness. It's super hyper focused consciousness on being holy. We call this the active principle of consciousness. If you want more information about this, I recommend an episode that is called Fire. It's an episode on Spanish. It is called Fuego, Los Cinco Elementos Fuego, en mi canal de YouTube or Spotify. So if you have the privilege to know Spanish, you can go there and you will be able to understand more what in the spiritual sense means fire. But fire means to purify. Notice, consciousness has a purification element with it. And we know that by addiction. So if you're an addict and you start or you stop being an addict, like for example, you was an addict of smoking cigarettes, and then you one day you say, that's it, I'm done. Well, the craving will come back every day. How you manage that craving? Well, a lot of people, what they do is that they eat. Oh, I now stop smoking, but now I eat two hamburgers per day or two pizzas per day because I need to substitute the cigarette with other thing. So that is no good also, right? But one thing that you can actually do is to burn the desire with your consciousness. Like you can focus so much in the craving, but focus so much in the craving that basically you start to dissoluting the craving. In alchemy, this is called calcination. You start calcinating, burning the craving with the power of your concentration. If you start to avoid the feeling of the craving, notice you probably will go back to be an addict of cigarettes, or maybe you will substitute that with another bad habit because you are not burning away the root of the problem. When we are talking about Christ consciousness, we are talking about a state of your consciousness in which you are so hyper conscious, you are so hyper mindful every day of your life that you can burn every sin in yourself. And this is a constant struggle, right? It's not like, voila, I'm super conscious, I am holy. No, it's an everyday struggle. We can call that a spiritual warfare. It's a spiritual warfare for you becoming more holy. And holy is a synonym of pure consciousness or lack of sin, lack of weakness, or perfect righteousness. That is Christ. Christ is the fire of your consciousness that purify everything. And this is the beautiful thing about Christ. If you can purify yourself, you start purifying the world, as I will be discussing in one of the other points, because consciousness is not local. And we know this by quantum physics, folks. And what I love about this podcast is that you are not only learning about Christ in a theological way, in a religious way. No, you're learning in a spiritual way, in a psychological way, in a scientific way with quantum physics, in an interreligious way, comparing this religion and these practices with others. So you are more holistic by listening to me. So, and I think that this is my strength, right? This is what I can bring to the table that is different from other teachers, gurus, priests, or whatever, right? So, what we know with quantum physics is that nothing is local, everything is universal or what they call global, right? And if you extrapolate this with the macrophysicists that they are studying the stories or they are stories, but also the theories about the multiverse, we know that everything in consciousness is also multiversal, not only pertaining to this universe, but to every universe that can be, every potential universe. So therefore, if you sophisticate enough your consciousness, if you burn enough your karma, as they say in Hinduism and in Buddhism, your sin, your weaknesses, your premature spiritual drives, your desires, your attachments, as they say in Buddhism, well, also the whole consciousness of the world will become better and better. It's like the world will follow your consciousness. And of course, the world will have a delay. That's why you can become enlightened and the world will become enlightened, but after 20, 30 years. So that's why you need to put yourself in the position of teaching, 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 walking the steps of Christ. Christ was not a guy, right, that just noticed he was one with God and then he kept silent, right? No, he kept teaching, teaching, teaching until he was killed. And now I'm referring to the historical figure, the human, the social being, the human being. He was killed, right? So, yeah, if you want to be Christ like, first understand Christ is consciousness, but hyper conscious, burning all desires, all sins. Then, when you purify your consciousness, you have a responsibility of teaching others to do it in order to spiritualize the whole multiverse. Also, you may say, but there are sometimes in the Bible I can read Jesus Christ like one after the other. What that means? Well, what do you think it means? If you combine the two things that I already explained to you and teach you, well, Jesus Christ basically means infinite love, Jesus, superimposed, merged, fused with your omnipresent consciousness. And this is where Jesus Christ became your Savior, your Lord, your guide, your Alpha, your way, your Zen, your Tao, your spirit, your soul, your devotion. Because you understand that to really follow Jesus Christ's steps is to follow the steps of your consciousness being all loving consciousness. So you cannot separate consciousness with love. It's like if your human body is made of bones, your consciousness is made of love. And if you can become aware of that in your spirit, if you can actualize this potential truth with faith and with devotion, you will transform from the inside in so many meaningful ways. And of course, you will be walking the path of service because service is love in action. And that is maybe one that I should add. I didn't have it here. But yeah, Christ was on service every time, serving people, serving people. But from where he retreated that energy, from where he gathered that energy to be so active, from his infinite fuel source, loving consciousness, or love as consciousness, or consciousness as love. So if you know a little bit about the chakras, it's like if your heart chakra, your love chakra, is completely combined and merged with your crown chakra, that is your consciousness, right? So if you can merge both in one supra chakra, well, you have Christ consciousness. It's another way to put it. Also, Christ consciousness is the perfect balance, and this is very important, is the perfect balance between male and female energy, between being compassionate but at the same time severe, between being a natural alpha but at the same time not imposing your leadership. If you study Jesus Christ, how he was as a leader, you will understand this. And also, if you study Jesus Christ as an energetic element, as an energetic being in the terms of female versus male energy, or masculine is more accurate, masculine and female, animus and anima. I have an episode about it. I don't remember if it is Spanish or in English. I think it's in English. Just search for the anima. Man, I don't know. Just search anima and animus in YouTube, Derek Israel, and see if it is in Spanish or in English. I don't remember. But something that like for me in the beginning, it was kind of difficult to understand why sometimes Christ, Jesus, is portrayed very feminine, very compassionate, and you see this in his photos, right? In his images. No photos, no one took a photo, right? But in the image that portrays Jesus, sometimes he's like very feminine in his approach. He's like, I want to hug you. Come here, my son. It's like a mother. But sometimes you see him very fit, very warrior like, very focused, looking straight, with the crown of spines, all bloody. It's more like the warrior aspect of Christ. And I was like, but what is it? Is feminine or is masculine in its energy? And then I realized when I actualized Christ consciousness that, oh, okay, it's both. It's both. It's subtle, but it's gross at the same time. It can be severe with his punishment, but it can be very compassionate, very kind as well. And it's like by being severe, he's kind. And I think that the Quran, if you read the Quran in the Muslim religion, they portray Allah with this trait as well. Allah is very severe. He wants to punish you, but then every time they say, but he's how they say, he's the compassionate. How do you say misericordious? I think it's misericordious. Let me just look this word in English. Merciful. Yeah. Forgiving is another adjective. So in the Quran, if you haven't read it, read it. It's a very, very powerful book. And they always say Christ consciousness is. Oh, just give me a moment. My daughter is entering to my studio. What's up, baby? Cristal. Cristal. Estoy grabando, mi amor. Yeah, you will ice cream. My baby girl is here asking for ice cream in my studio. That was nice. Anyways, so yes, they always say in the Quran, Allah is powerful but compassionate and merciful, because those gods, these entities, these phenomena, these notes of consciousness that represent everything that we can be, they must integrate all opposites. And I discussed this very in depth in my episode called How to Operate in God Mode. Go watch that. So he's very alpha. Just notice how alpha male is Christ. Well, we can say alpha female as well, because he's not the kind of a male only. He's like a hybrid in energy, right? Maybe he was materialized as a man. Maybe we don't know. Maybe she was a woman, and they just wrote about him as a male because it's politically correct for the age that he was living. But we don't know, right? But what we know by just understanding and studying leadership dynamics is that he was so alpha. Like when he said an instruction, he didn't say too much about it. He just say, follow me, and that's it, right? And maybe if you don't have that power of leadership, you say, hey guys, follow me because I will bring this thing to the organization. I will guarantee these sales, blah, blah. You need to add a lot of language because you are lacking. My baby girl's again here. Cristal. Cristal. I'm recording. Like, my baby girl is entering to my studio asking for ice cream. I'm like, baby, please. So, what I was. Yes, you are adding a lot of language because you are lacking power. When you have absolute power, you don't need to add extra language. You are like Jesus. You follow me. That's it. That's it. So that is being an alpha. He was so assured. He was so resolved in his pattern, in his spirit, in his leadership traits that he didn't need any more language. Let me just 1 second to secure the door because I need to, I need to avoid this happening again. Okay, now I locked the door. My baby girl cannot enter now. Anyways, all right. So yeah. So if you want to be Christ consciousness or to develop this type of consciousness, understand you need to become an alpha female, an alpha male, but at the same time, you cannot become a tyrant that you are imposing your leadership. Just notice, Jesus Christ didn't impose his leadership on no one. He talked about it. He said, if you want to follow the Father, God, follow me. If you want, like he didn't took a revolver and say, follow me, right? That is imposing leadership. He was not doing that. He was not a tyrant. He was an alpha, grounded state of consciousness. Okay. But also, he was operating in a lot of compassion. But at the same time, that compassion has an infrastructure of the law. And the law means the divine rule. So it's not like a compassion, like this new agey type compassion of some hippies that are, oh, I'm so compassionate. I'm so compassionate. And they cannot even structure their own life. They lack the discipline to structure their own life, their own goals in life. No. The Christ consciousness is compassion, absolutely. Is kind of the Buddhist compassion. In Buddhism, compassion is enlightenment. But that compassion is discipline, is with structure. It's very, very important. It's not lacking structure. Also, Christ consciousness is to be one with the Father, one with the Creator, one with God. Therefore, being Christ consciousness is being God. What said Jesus? What said love? I am the Father. I am the way. I am. I am is the most spiritual phrase of all time. Even before Jesus, we say I am to refer to the unifying principle of consciousness. Everything is unified, therefore I am, but not I as the ego. It's not like Derek is God. No. Derek is a social human being talking in a podcast right now to another social human being that has an ego in the other side of the screen. But we both are God when we transcend that ego. And we are both the same God, the same consciousness. We are all infinitely connected. So I think that what Jesus didn't tell, or maybe he did, but they didn't wrote it, I don't know, is he should say, I am God, or I am the Father, and also you are the Father. Because if he said that, everyone will know, okay, he's not special. He's special in the sense that, oh my God, he actualized that consciousness. But that potential for actualization is in everyone. It's in everyone. You have the potential of becoming God yourself. If you develop enough spirituality in your life, if you walk the way of love and consciousness. Now, to become God is basically to become all lovable, all conscious, and all creative. You want to become all powerful and you want to create a cosmos and you want, to rule the world. That is not God. That is your ego with the idea of godhood. Notice the trap. That is your ego with the idea of godhood. Real godhood, you don't care about that. You just care about loving, creating, because God is the creator. That's why when you are an artist, you are godlike. When you are creating your own universe with your own art, you are recreating the God's work in his image. And basically that's it. You are God. I'm God. We are all God. I'm not special. We are non-special. We are all the same. That is Christ consciousness. Also, Christ consciousness is miraculous oriented. This comes from authentic humility and altruistic action. So Christ was able to do a lot of miracles. I have an episode on Spanish that is called La Ciencia Detrás de los Milagros. Book it on YouTube, The Science Behind Miracles. But basically, a miracle is something that we cannot explain rationally, logically, that sometimes it challenges the conventional notion of the materialistic points of view of reality, the materialistic paradigms. Like it cannot be done materialistically. But hey, who said that the world is material? That is only a paradigm. The real world is spiritual, it's mystical, it's magical. And Christ, obviously, he understood this, and therefore he could perform miracles. But he performed miracles not because he understood this and was egoic enough to say, oh, okay, I can perform miracles. I will do it to show off people. No, because he had a very potent humility and altruistic element in his heart. Like he saw the suffering of others, and he was so deeply affected and impacted by that that he could not do anything else than to do a miracle, than to transform reality, transmute matter with the power of mentalism, with the power of magnetism and penetration and concentration of spirit. He didn't have any other option to do, only to do it, only to do that, only to change reality. What else he will do? He was suffering, not not because he was a depressed guy. He was suffering because he was so enlightened, so one with God, that he owned the suffering of others and he took leadership on solving the suffering of others. That is the altruistic element. Now, altruism now is more kind of, okay, I need to do a non-profit organization because I want to avoid taxes, or why I want to engineer the public image of my organization. That is not Christ-like altruistic principle. Christ-like is really being humble enough to do it with your devotion. Even if no one else will know that you help that people, you will do it. That is Christ consciousness. That is love in action. That is compassion, love in action. Also, Christ consciousness is unwavering and absolute faith. The only time when Christ lost faith, I think it was in the cross, when he said, Father, why you have, leave me behind, or something like that. But that just shows the humanness of Christ. Like we all can lose faith in any moment. That is the war. That is the spiritual war. We try every day our best to be all faithful, to stay in our spiritual lane. But sometimes life is so tricky and our ego is so tricky that we lose faith and we are like, oh man, I don't even know if this is real. And those seconds, you come back from Christ consciousness to human consciousness again. And that is normal. We all have those. But the trick is to come back to the faith state of consciousness, to the state of consciousness of absolute conviction. That is faith. Absolute conviction, absolute oneness with an idea of positivity, an idea of growth, an idea of service, an idea of devotion, an idea of a better life. But obviously, the better life is on your consciousness as well, as I will be discussing in the next point. That Christ consciousness is not about reaching heaven as a place, it's about being in heaven and bring heaven to the earth as a state of consciousness. Heaven is a state of consciousness. It's not a place. Have you noticed this? You can be in heaven right now. You don't need to wait to die. You can be in heaven right now if you're absolutely present. And I will do an episode about this in the future. I already did one of hell. I told you the real definition of hell. And I said that hell really is suffering or self-imposed suffering. That is the real hell. It's a state of consciousness. Go there to that episode. Heaven is the contrary. Heaven is absolute peace and bliss. Self-imposed, self-imposed absolute bliss and happiness and peace of mind, mindfulness, presence, love. And this is something that you can achieve right now. It's not that you can achieve, it's that you can be. That you can be. You can fuse your consciousness with heaven consciousness that is the same as Christ consciousness, and you are living like this. And as the same as I told you before, you can bring this vibration to the earth. You can make the earth more heaven-like if you are operating from heaven. And obviously, when we are talking about angels, we are talking about communicating the language of God. That is also another episode that I will do in the future that will be called how to speak the language of God. And also another episode that I will be doing in the future is about the true nature of angels and the true nature of demons. But for now, what you need to know is that heaven basically is as a state, not a place, and angels are how you communicate with different notes of consciousness that are on heaven, aka in this vibration of consciousness, and they gave information to you. So for example, I can say that this old podcast, when I was writing this podcast, I was like so surprised, not with my ego, because it's I don't know this, but I was being communicated this through angels. And it's not like some, fairy, lady fairy, or being with what do you call that? Oh no, I forgot. With how do you? I will search the word. Wings. Yeah, wings. I remember. It's not like a being with wings came to me and told me this. No, it's just the inspired thought. Like I was concentrating Christ consciousness with my cell phone and asking myself, okay, what will be the structure of this podcast, of this communication, of this art, of this creation based on love and consciousness? And then I download this information and I knew this is angels. Angels as a state of consciousness, not as a being with wings. Are you understanding this, my friend? This is very profound. Most priests, even popes, they don't know what I'm teaching here because they are dogmatized. They are in the dogma of the religion instead of in the state of consciousness that the religion is trying to portray. Also, Christ consciousness is the natural exorcist of demons, in other words, of attachments of your ego. Like if you can access Christ consciousness, you can exorcise your demons. And your demons, as I told you, are egoic structures, attachments. Maybe you have an attachment for food, that is a demon. With Christ consciousness, as I already explained to you in the addiction example, you can penetrate that. You can penetrate your addiction to sex. You can penetrate maybe your weaknesses, your premature tendencies, your lack of knowledge. You can penetrate your lack of confidence, your lack of self-love, stuff that is more psychology based, stuff that I discuss in this podcast a lot, like personal development stuff. Whenever those personal development elements are low in your life, probably you have a demon there. And by demon, I mean a psychological pattern that is dysfunctional. And I will go to discuss that in another episode. But with the Christ consciousness, aka love superimposed in consciousness, you can stretch that part of your personality in a way that become more more flow-like, more dynamic, more evolved, more sophisticated, and then you can holisticize, or you can maximize, or you can wholesome your consciousness, become your, turn your consciousness in a holistic thing. And my baby girl is now trying to open the door. Thanks God, thanks Christ consciousness that I locked the door. She's trying to open again. She wants to come to the podcast. I don't know why. Right. So yeah, Christ consciousness is your natural exorcist. And finally, and this is the last element, I know that I'm about to, reach the hour, is that Christ consciousness is about becoming the totality of what you are, the totality, the wholeness of what you are or what you can be. So it's the totality of your actuality, what you are now, and your potential, aka the self with capital S archetype that I will be discussing very soon in this podcast. And therefore, when you become the totality of what you are and can be, you save salvation or spiritualize. Save is to spiritualize the world as a result as well. So let's say that if you don't become the totality of what you can be, if you don't burn all your potential, you are not Christ-like. Christ died at 33 years old, but at 33, he was everything he can be. He could be everything. Like if he was, let's say that we change the story, he was never killed and he lived until 80, until 90 years old, he will be the same Christ, the same, because he already, that's why he's so powerful. And that's why he changed this history of humankind, because he reached everything he can be at 33 years old. What he did for that? Well, he meditated a lot. He prayed a lot. He studied a lot. He went to the desert like consciousness, the fire of consciousness. If you have ever been in a desert, you know, um, you know that to be in a desert is very, very challengeful. It's like you are burning yourself every time. You are burning. The sun is burning as consciousness is burning all the impurities of your consciousness, of itself, through itself, by itself, for becoming itself in every potential state of consciousness that you can be. And that is you. You as your complete you, your total you, yourself with capital S, the archetype. Carl Jung discussed this very well, and I will be discussing this in the future. So this is it, my friend. I hope that this podcast revolutionized your understanding about Christ. Um, I hope the most important thing about this episode is, that you decide to put this on action, that you decide to implement the love, absolute love, to implement the absolute fire of consciousness, to implement the merging of both consciousness and love in a superimposing way. The balance of male and female energy, compassionate and severeness, and also being a natural alpha, but not imposing your leadership. Also, that you understand that you are one with God, one with the Creator, and you can recreate creation through your art, through your creativity. Also, by understanding that you need to create miracles that come from humility and altruistic action, and that miracles are made through unwavering and absolute faith. And faith is this state of consciousness of Christ. Also, remember that you need to bring heaven to the earth. And heaven is a presence, it's a state of consciousness, it's not a place. And also to exorcise your demons, your dysfunctional patterns with love and with consciousness, and therefore becoming the totality of what you are. Remember, my friend, that you can comment below what do you think about it, this episode, and also if you have another node of consciousness that you think is Christ-like, please share it. I know this is not a comprehensive list. It's not a complete list. So bring your sand, bring your grain of sand, bring your intelligence, bring your consciousness to this consciousness, and leave a comment of another consciousness like or Christ like element that you want to share. Also share this with your friends, share this in the groups that you are participating in, your chats, share this in your social media. Believe me, this can revolutionize lives. And with this episode, we can basically enhance the understanding of Christ and this spiritual realm a lot for people that are blind and that are lost in religion and in dogma. So please share. Please also donate on Patreon if you like this creativity. By this way, we can continue this podcast for free, transforming thousands of lives around the world. You can donate only $5 per month. And with that, I'm cool with it. Also, remember that we have a Telegram group. It's completely free. The link for everything that I'm mentioning is in the description. You can join our chat. You can join our Patreon. And also go to the link in the description that it says everything promoted. Go to the live transformation premium service if you want a complete life transformation with your favorite clinical psychologist, doctor, guru, coach, Derek Israel. And I see you